Hi, I'm Vena Jones-Cox, www.therealestategoddess.com, and I am here today and tomorrow and the next day to get rid of some of the myths and misunderstandings about wholesaling real estate that I keep seeing everywhere on the web. I've been wholesaling properties since 1996. I've been in real estate full-time since 1989. So you can choose to believe what I'm going to tell you about how the wholesaling business works, or you can choose to believe how your friend from your local real estate association who's done one deal and been in it for 8 months tells you how it works. Or you can choose to believe the sales pitch for the $3,000 wholesaling course when they tell you how it works. But I would recommend, since I have done well over 600 wholesale deals in this time, that you maybe take a moment and pay a little bit of attention to what I'm about to tell you. The reason I'm doing these videos is because in addition to being a full-time professional wholesaler and teaching wholesaling, I also am a buyer of wholesale properties. And when I'm dealing with folks out there who really don't understand the process or understand it in a different way than it actually works in the real world, or worst of all, just haven't even bothered to get fully educated in how wholesaling works, it makes my life as your buyer really, really difficult. So in today's video, what we're going to talk about is what wholesaling is. Believe it or not, I deal with people all the time who are trying to wholesale properties to me or to colleagues of mine or competitors of mine that they really just don't even seem to understand what the basic flow of a wholesale deal is. So we're going to start with that. If you already know what the basic flow of a wholesale deal is, feel free to wait until tomorrow's video. But wholesaling, in a lot of ways, is the simplest strategy in real estate investment. Simplest meaning it takes the smallest set of steps and it takes the smallest set of skills of any of the money-making strategies in real estate. It takes a lot more investment of time and effort and just real depth of knowledge to be a landlord or a retailer than it does to be a wholesaler. That does not mean it takes no skills and no knowledge and no education. You are not going to watch this video and come out being able to wholesale properties. You're not going to watch a webinar one evening and come out being able to wholesale properties. You are not going to read an ebook that somebody put together and sold to you for 99 cents or even made free and be able to go out and wholesale properties in a way that's going to be profitable for you and is going to be beneficial for your buyers and your sellers and is going to keep you out of trouble. It's simple. That doesn't mean there's nothing that you have to do. So let's look at the 5 steps that it takes to wholesale a property. I went through these 5 steps when I wholesaled my very first property back in late 1995. I still go through these same 5 steps with every single solitary property I wholesale. You don't need to overcomplicate it, but you are going to need to do all of these things. Okay, are you ready? Step 1 is you have to find the right deal. What is the right deal? Well, remember, who is our customer when we wholesale properties? It is always another real estate professional. It is a renovator who's going to fix up the property and resell it to a homeowner. It could be a renovator who's going to fix up the property and sell it as a turnkey rental to another investor, or it could be a landlord who's going to fix it up and rent it out for long-term income. We don't wholesale properties to people who are going to live in it. And the reason it has to do with the kind of condition that the properties are in, with the fact that we need to sell them for cash, and that home buyers typically can't just write a check to buy the property. They need to finance it, and that causes issues with timing, and the condition of the property is going to be an issue if they need to get financing. So our buyers are always other real estate investors. So when I say find the right deal, I'm not just talking about the deal that you can get at the right price. I'm talking about the kind of deal that most buyers would be interested in. Now, are there buyers who are interested in having you wholesale them office buildings or big apartment buildings or mobile homes or mobile home parks. Sure, there's some buyers out there for that kind of property, but as a wholesaler, don't you think you should focus on the kind of properties in the kind of neighborhoods that are most likely to be interesting to the most buyers out there? Say yes. So what is the right deal? It is a property that is a 1-family, 2-family, or 3-family. It is a property in a bread and butter neighborhood or a rental neighborhood. So we're not looking for properties in war zones where everything is boarded up and there's open drug activity on every corner, because that deal, doesn't matter how cheap it is, it's going to be hard to sell. If properties in those neighborhoods weren't hard to sell, they wouldn't all be boarded up. It's also not a neighborhood where people who are vice presidents of their company live. That's a move-up neighborhood. And although occasionally you can find the right deal in that neighborhood, it's much more common that your buyers are going to want a rental type property in a rental type area. So maybe where there's a lot of Section 8 tenants, that would be a rental type area. Or they're going to want the kind of middle range bread and butter property that FHA home buyers buy, first time home buyers. Okay, so number one is the kind of property 1 through 3 family. Yes, you can go buy one of these courses on how to flip apartment buildings, and you can spend a bunch of time looking for the right deal in the apartment building, and then you can hope that the small percentage of people who can buy that apartment building are going to be interested in your apartment building. But if you'll stick to that kind of property, you'll find more deals and you'll find more buyers for those deals. Type of neighborhood, bread and butter, or border zone. The third thing about the right deal is that it has the right seller. Not every 1-family, 2-family, or 3-family in a rental area or a bread and butter area is one where the seller really needs to sell. And we need deals where sellers need to sell. Not that they want to sell, not that it would be nice if they could get rid of their properties, but there's something going on in their lives that has caused them to not want to list the property with a real estate agent and take bids and have people go through and maybe have it be on the market for 120 or 180 days. They need to sell now. And their main motivation is not to get the most possible money. That is a very common misconception about how we are able to negotiate the deals that we're able to negotiate. It is not because the seller doesn't understand what his property would be worth if he could fix it up or if he could wait. It's that it's more important for him to just get rid of it, move on, not think about it anymore, than it is for him to hold out for top dollar. So that's going to have something to do with the seller's situation. Maybe he's getting a divorce, maybe he's had job loss, medical problems. Very often, these sellers are actually in good shape financially, other than this one property that is problematic for them. You know, they may have great jobs and they bought a couple of rental properties that they weren't able to adequately manage, and frankly they can afford to take the loss and they're just done. They just don't ever want to deal with another tenant. So we're looking for the right situation where the seller doesn't want to sell, he needs to sell, and where price is not as important to him as speed. The fourth thing about the right deal is going to be the condition of the property. It's very rare that we as wholesalers put properties under contract that are in great shape. They're like perfect, they don't need anything, or even just need paint and carpet, easy stuff like that. Often part of what is motivating the seller to sell cheap and now rather than hold on to it and get more money later is the condition of the property. Maybe it's had tenant damage, maybe it's been vacant for a while, maybe it was their home and it just hasn't been updated for years and years and years, and they don't want to spend $20,000 or $25,000 updating it so that they can get top price. Maybe they inherited it. The important thing is the kinds of sellers we deal with typically have properties that are in distressed condition. And if you will focus on sellers who have some reason to be motivated, have properties in the kinds of areas we're talking about, and that property is in distressed condition, you will avoid wasting a lot of time making what is going to look to the sellers like low-ball offers on properties that they have no reason to want to sell cheaply due to their situation or the condition of the property. So the right deal. Don't come to me, if you're a wholesaler, don't come to me with a property that has a storefront on the bottom floor and then 2 efficiency apartments upstairs, because that is not a kind of property that's going to attract a lot of investors. You have to be careful that what you are putting under contract is something that you are going to be able to sell, because for all you have heard about, well, if you can't sell it, don't worry about it, just, drop the contract, renegotiate the price, move on. Your goal as a wholesaler, listen to me, should be to sell every property you put under contract, or to say it the correct way, to sell every contract you get. Your goal should be to never leave a seller in a lurch and have to call them back and tell them, well, I can't buy your property for what I said I would, and so I'm just exercising my inspection contingency. Now, it's not that that's never going to happen, because no matter how skilled you get at these things, there will be times when there is something wrong with the property that the seller didn't disclose and that you weren't able to see when you went through it. We saw one a few weeks ago that it was so full of stuff, like the seller had furniture and boxes and everything piled up against every wall, and we literally couldn't see everything about the property. And when the seller cleaned it out, there were some things that weren't able to be seen, and so yes, we had to renegotiate that price. But that wasn't a matter of going out and throwing contracts at the wall and seeing what stuck and what we could sell. Your goal should always be every deal you put under contract gets sold, and in fact, you should be so confident that you've gotten the right deal in the right area at the right price that if it doesn't sell, you should be willing to close it, because you know you can sell it and maybe you just didn't have enough time to do it. And in a later video, we'll talk about some ways to close those deals using other people's money. So the right deal, number 1. Number 2, and this is where the vast majority of wholesalers that I see fall down on the job. What is your job? It is to negotiate fantastic profit-making deals at a price at which you can turn around and sell those deals at an increased price to another investor, and that investor is still getting a great deal. Where wholesalers fall down, where they're not being properly trained, or where they're blowing off the training, or where they don't think it's important because it's being emphasized to them so much that, hey, just go put 10 properties under contract, and if you only sell 2 of those contracts, that's awesome because you made 2 deals that you wouldn't have made before. You have to evaluate the property correctly. You have to understand how to find comparable sales, how to evaluate those comparable sales, how to know what the after repaired value of that property is before you ever make an offer. It's not about how much is the seller asking, or how much do the tax people say that the property is worth. Neither one of those things has anything at all to do with what the property is actually worth, and you better be able to go out and research that and find out, when my buyer buys it, what is he buying? He's buying a house worth what fixed up? That's step 1 of evaluation. Step 2 of evaluation is you need to be able to walk through that property. You need to be able to tell what it is that your potential buyer is probably going to do to it and what that's going to cost. Because without those 2 numbers, you are guessing. You are guessing what the value is, and then you're going out to your buyers and you're saying, oh, well, it's worth this much money. And if you're completely off, guess what happens? You lose that buyer. And you don't just lose them for that deal, you lose them for all future deals. I have wholesalers whose numbers are blocked from my phone because I don't want them wasting my time with their stupid deals that they think are worth twice as much as what they really are fixed up, and they think it's going to cost 1/3 as much to fix it as it actually does, and they haven't bothered to get trained. You cannot blow this off. It's not rocket science. Guys, sit in front of me for 4 hours and I can teach you exactly how to find the value of any property, and I can teach you what you're looking for in inspection and how to price those repairs. We're not talking about having to go get a college education in this, but you better do this. And if you don't believe me, go to your association at the next meeting and go around to some of the really active investors and ask them what they dislike about wholesalers. And the answer will always be, they put these deals in front of me and they say it's worth $175, and I know perfectly well nothing in that neighborhood's ever sold for more than $120, and they tell me I can replace a roof, a furnace, the windows, a kitchen, a bath, paint it and carpet it for $5,000. And they waste my time they're either wasting my time or they're greedy. They're either stupid or they're greedy. That's the conclusion that your buyers come to. So please be a professional, use this, learn it, because it's going to benefit you in everything you do in real estate. It's not just your wholesale deals, but the deals that you don't wholesale, that you buy to rent or that you buy to rehab. You've got to know this. It's a basic skill that every real estate investor or entrepreneur has to have. So once you have evaluated it and you know what the after repaired value is and you know what the repair costs are, you also know basically what other investors want to make off of deals, right? They want to buy them at around 65 to 70% of the after repaired value, less repair costs. And if they're landlords, they also want to know that at that price, the property is going to cash flow. So by using some simple formulas that we won't go through today, but by using some simple formulas, if you've done these two steps right, you can come up with the exact number you ought to offer. And you go to the seller and you say to the seller, look, I've done my math. It's all about the math. This is the number I've come up with. Does it work for you or not? Will it work for every seller? No. No. There's be sellers who owe more than that. There will be sellers who just think that their property is worth more than that. That's fine. This is just, we're talking, we're seeing if this works for both of us. The ones who say, yes, that would work for me, you then put the property under contract. Now guys, don't fall for this, I've got a better system for putting properties under contract than the normal system that normal people use to put a property under contract, which is what? A purchase and sale agreement, right? I have seen so many wholesalers, and it seems to have gotten worse in the last 18 months or so, who they have a good deal. It's basically, the numbers are right, but then they come to me wanting me to take over a contract that even they don't understand. It's an option agreement instead of a purchase agreement, and in many cases, because they didn't understand it, the term optionor and optionee are mixed up somewhere in the contract. More importantly, often the sellers don't understand what they signed. They looked at the price, they said that's good, they signed the contract, but they don't understand what an option agreement is. And so when I sit down at closing with them, they're saying, wait a minute, why do I have to pay the taxes? Well, because you're the optionor, and it says here the optionor is going to pay the taxes. And they say, oh, I thought I was the optionee. Just use a simple purchase and sale agreement, okay? And please don't draw it up yourself, and please don't just download some random one from the internet. There are good purchase and sale agreements already out there. If you think you need to make a change to them, and I would question what that change would be, but if you think you need to make a change to them, make it, but then spend a little bit of money and run it past an attorney and make sure that what you think you're saying is what you're saying. Because the wholesalers that are wandering around out there with paperwork that would basically be unenforceable if it ever went to court just amazes me. And I think to myself, on some of them, we're not attorneys, right? We don't go to law school, but some of them, it amazes me to the point where I think, did you read this before you started using it? And maybe you didn't, maybe you read it but you didn't understand it. If you read it and you didn't understand it, you probably shouldn't be using it. So put the property under contract, because as wholesalers, and this is another very common misconception, we don't sell houses. You know how I know we don't sell houses? Because we don't own houses. What we sell is rights in a contract. Contracts are assignable unless they specifically say that they are not assignable. So we're not just talking here about purchase contracts. All contracts are assignable unless there's a clause in there that says they're not assignable. So if someone told you, oh, the way to make a contract assignable is to write and/or assigns after your name, they were wrong, and they didn't understand their own business, because you don't have to write and/or assigns to make a contract assignable if it doesn't have a non-assignment clause. And if it does, writing and/or assigns doesn't make it assignable. It doesn't undo that non-assignment clause. So we sell contracts. What we're selling is not properties, it's deals. We're selling a deal that we set up, and you don't want to say, I'm selling a property. You don't want to say in your marketing, I'm selling a property. You want to say, I'm assigning my rights in a contract. Without the contract, you have nothing to sell. Don't go out and make a deal with a seller, shake his hand, and then go try and find a buyer and not put the property under contract until you find a buyer. Because yes, in that case, the buyer absolutely can go around your back. If that's been one of your concerns, then you're going to give a buyer an address and he's going to directly contact the seller and say, hey, what did she offer you? I'll offer you more than that. You really do have that problem if you don't have a written agreement. Now, if you have a written agreement, the seller really cannot legally sell the property to someone else while you are still in contract. So get the contract. Anything you've heard that says do this in some other order, anything that you've heard that says, oh, don't even bother to get your own contracts, go find somebody who already has a contract and you bring the buyer to the table and you close it. Okay, so what did you just get paid for? If you don't have a contract, you have nothing to sell. If you are getting effectively commissioned for bringing a buyer into someone else's deal where you are not a principal, you need a real estate license for that. Step 4, find the buyer. Now, here's another thing. We don't find deals for buyers. We don't find a particular buyer and say, what are you looking for, Joe? I will go find it for you. And you want to be very careful about not saying anything like that in your seller market. Now, I know what you mean is, I find deals, and Joe, if you will tell me what you want when I find one that meets your criteria, I will be contacting you about it. But to various regulatory agencies, when you say, hey, tell me what you want and I will find it for you, what that means is you're going to tell me what kind of deal you want, what kind of area, and then I am going to act like an agent and go out and search out that deal for you and then sell it to you. And that's not what we do. We find the deals and then we find the right buyer for the deal. Now, should you have a list of people who are interested in buying rental properties and rehab properties? Absolutely. Should you grow that list constantly? Absolutely. There's 12 different ways that I use to do that so that I'm constantly adding people to this buyer's list. But I don't walk into a property thinking this is a property I'm trying to find for Joe. Because from a practical standpoint, what if Joe doesn't want it? What if I only have this one buyer who wants this kind of property and I call him up and he says, oh wow, I wish you'd called me last week because I just bought another property and I'm out of money. Now I could potentially be doing what? Holding the seller up. I could potentially have told this seller that we're going to close on this deal and have to go back to him and say, sorry, can't do it. And you never want to do that. Once you have found the buyer for the property, he's gone in, he's looked at it, he's evaluated, he's agreed that the price at which you have offered it is a good price. The next step is get paid. Now that's the step we all want, right? And many times we go through these 4 steps, well, we go through these 3 steps anyway, 10 times before we get to 3, get the contract, are able to find the buyer and get paid. That's just part of the business. Whoever told you that this business requires no work, is turnkey, is done for you, all you have to do is buy my software and it will buy and sell properties for you while you sleep, was either an idiot or a liar. I'm sorry, I haven't had my coffee this morning. I normally would mince words on that, but that pitch for wholesaling drives me nuts. Because I've been doing it for years, and I have help, and I have staff, and I have business plans and descriptions, and we've got systems in place. Someone has to do some work. Did I just lose you? Are you going, well, no, that other guru said I didn't have to do any work, so I'm going to go listen to what they have to say. All right, you can go listen to what you want to hear, or you can listen to the truth, which is what I am telling you right now. Do you have to do all the work? Absolutely not. There would be work that I would recommend that you never do. It needs to be done, but I would recommend that you not do it. Addressing postcards, don't do that, okay? Don't do your own closings, don't do your own title searches, don't do your own bookkeeping. So this has to be done, these steps have to be done though, in real life. And I would challenge you, again, to go to your real estate association and ask anybody there if they've ever had any success with a turnkey done-for-you wholesaling system. Have they ever actually put a property under contract and gotten paid? So those of you who are still with me because you understand that anything that's going to make you money is going to require work, should know that what you get paid in terms of how many hours you worked on this effectively, right? I'm not counting the hours that you got on the internet to look for properties and you ended up seeing a kitten video instead. I'm talking about hours you actually worked effectively. You're going to get paid more dollars per hour for being a good wholesaler than you are anywhere else. In my experience, the experience of many of my students over the years, it takes about 20 hours of actual work to get to a wholesale deal. So if you're in a reasonably inexpensive market, in other words, not on the coasts, and you're going to make $7,000 on that wholesale deal on average, and we don't set a fee and say every buyer has to. It's all based on what did we get the property under contract for in the first place. But if you're going to average $7,000, that's $350 an hour for your 20 hours of work. And I don't know too many jobs that pay $350 an hour. Now the process of getting paid depends a little bit on how you want to handle it. Is there a right way and a wrong way? Probably not. Is there an easier way and a harder way? Yes. The easy way to get paid is to assign this contract for your fee and let the buyer go to the closing and buy the property from the seller. If you are uncomfortable with that strategy for some reason, maybe you've heard some stuff that your state doesn't like that, or you don't want your buyer to know what you paid, although I would argue with you that if he cares, he's the wrong buyer. You can also close the deal. Go ahead and fill out a purchase agreement with your buyer subject to you getting clear title. Close the deal and sell it 10 minutes later. There's contracts for that too, and they need to be right. I'm trying to keep this video as short as possible, but I will give you a heinous example that I've seen several times lately from different wholesalers. Their assignment agreements say, you're going to pay me this money, and I'm going to keep it whether or not the seller comes to the closing. Now, do I agree that if a buyer gives you money and gets assigned your agreement that you get to keep the money if he decides not to buy it? Yeah, I do, because you did what you were supposed to do. You provided a ready, willing, and able seller on a good deal. He decided not to buy the property. You still did what you were supposed to do. But what if there's a title problem? What if the seller can't sell? What if it turns out the seller doesn't own the house when the title search happens, which has happened to me more than once? What if the seller just gets cold feet, decides not to sell? The buyer should get his money back, right? So these purchase agreements or these assignment agreements with your buyers that say you don't get the money back no matter what, they're unfair, it's not good business, and you get a reputation real quick if this happens and the seller can't sell and you keep the buyer's money, where no one's going to want to work with you. So deceptively simple, right? 5 steps. You can't skip any of them. There aren't any additional ones that you need to add into. I mean, when I look at how wholesaling as a strategy is pitched out in the world, some of it seems to be overly simplified. Like, oh, don't worry about having to evaluate it, just put it under contract. No, that's not right. Some of it is sold on the basis of, I have this whole new way of doing things and it's more complicated, but it's right. It's not more complicated than this. 600 deals and they were all done with these 5 steps. The key is in the details, right? Where do I find the right deal? How do I evaluate the property? What do you mean negotiate? What is it that I say to a seller when they want price X and I need to pay them half of that? You know, how do I make that happen? How do I make that happen without the seller hanging up the phone on me? How do I make, if I can't make it happen, how do I have rapport with the seller so that 6 months later when he is ready to sell at that price, he wants to talk to me and work with me? Having the right contracts, having the different ways to find the buyers, knowing what to say to the buyers to make them interested in going to look at your deals, and how to do the paperwork and stay within the law on the get paid part. So tomorrow we will deal with some of these details, and we're going to deal with the top mistakes that I see wholesalers making that are either ruining their chances of having a good business, or are making them bad business people and are making it difficult even when they do sell deals for them to make money, or are probably outside the lines of the law. So I hope you enjoyed our little discussion today. Go to www.therealestategoddess.com for more free information and articles about wholesaling, and I will see you tomorrow.